Hello friends, we are back with another time lapse, and this time I'm going to talk a little bit about the process. As you can see right off the bat, I went about this piece a lot differently than anything else I've done. I wanted to experiment with gradient maps, and now I'm no expert, obviously, but literally all I did was take my vaguely grayscale painted sketch and overlay some gradient mapping. I adjusted and added different colors until I found a scheme that I enjoyed. I played with some different types of layer modes until I had a base that I liked and I could begin to sharpen up the colors as needed. Now I knew I wanted some extra vibrance in the skin, for instance, so I overlaid a lovely peachy tone. And what you're watching in this part is me trying to create essentially the palette I will work and pull from and of course adjust over time. A frequent part of my process is being sure to check my values. There are many ways to do this and each artist has their own preferred method, but I like to have it on a layer over everything. That's just a layer filled in black, and set the layer mode to color, and then I can toggle it on and off as needed. An important part of bringing the colors together that you'll notice is sort of trying to see the whole piece in its entirety. And these are bits and pieces that are going to change, but I like to, brush colors over the foreground and bring colors into the background and just sort of try to create a unity from the get-go. That's been very important in my process lately and very helpful. So sort of vibe, and I felt like that was going to play a lot into the way that her features came together and of course her expression. I spent a lot of time sculpting her face, and you'll see later that I do go back, as I so often tend to do, and adjust even more to really lean into that concept. I do always like to start with the faces in my paintings. I just always have. I feel like it kind of sets the tone for the workflow, but also for the piece. And even though I more often than not adjust, again, because I simply cannot stop tweaking, it is something that I'm working on being better at. It does give me a really solid foundation to begin on the other parts of the piece. In my brain, I feel like if the face is sort of mostly there, then I can mentally head to the other parts of the piece. So a large portion of the beginning of this time lapse is, sculpting the face. But on this piece, I tried my best to really focus on the forms as well. And this is something that I've been working on in mentorship, and we've been talking about it a lot. And I think I achieved a specificity and understanding to form and how it interacts with light and each other and all of the other forms and planes. I achieved that in this piece in some of the best ways that I have previously, I think. And of course, as I always remind myself and everyone, nothing is perfect, and we are constantly adjusting and learning and growing. But overall, honestly, I'm proud and happy with how this piece came together. Comparing it to last year's digital Mermay piece, which I do still like. I think that it's still a pretty piece and I enjoy looking at it and sharing it. But I think you can see a lot of growth in my confidence in posing, lighting, composition. I loved in this piece here having an implied flow to this piece, kind of, where we're not seeing the whole of her tail and that movement, but I think you can tell it's there. And I think, again, that's that confidence and growth that just comes from understanding a lot more foundationally. And once again, that comes back to form, because you need to sort of understand how these things and these parts not only come together, but how they work together and interact with one another, and how the lighting interacts and brings it all together. Yeah. While I continue to just noodle and paint and work, I'm just going to ramble about some of the larger, broader strokes about this piece. So this piece took about 6 hours total, give or take. I don't have ever a proper timestamp on it, but judging based on my recorded files, about 6 hours, which honestly is on the shorter end for me. I think I'm typically in the 8 to 12 hour range for my larger pieces, but I really wanted to focus on keeping things looser and not getting totally wrapped up in the details here, / being more specific about the details that I did want to focus on, as opposed to letting it all be detail. So you'll notice later on when I paint the scales that I do imply a lot of detail, and I use loose shapes to give the vibe of it all, rather than painting each individual scale, which is very tempting. There's something very therapeutic and relaxing about thinking about that, but I didn't do that here. And I'm pretty impressed with the fact that I managed to honestly scale down these time lapses into roughly a half an hour. Anything longer than that and I feel bad. No one has time for that. I certainly don't have enough to talk about for longer than that. I don't even have enough to talk about for a half an hour. And with this piece, I actually did film most of the process. After the sketching and underpainting phase, I didn't record any of that, which is rare. I usually forget to record at least 3 to 5 times in my process. And I'll notice that I was very focused when painting this. I didn't have long stretches of time that I had to look for and delete in my recordings. So proud of me, proud of us. We're doing it, friends. So here we can see one of those moments where I go back and really refine some of the parts of her face. I wanted to elevate some of those details and features and just really get the vibe that I was going for in my mind. So it's a lot of sharpening cheekbones and jawline, leaning into the brows and the shape of her eyes and the way that her nose, hits on her face. And it continues to be a process to do this sort of slight exaggeration, but I did have a lot of fun trying to give some of that otherworldly feature vibe, and I want to continue to push features in various ways, and so that will certainly be a work of progress over time. And the key to this is going to be doing a lot of focused studies of various facial features, so eyes, nose, ears, lips, all of it, so that I can fully understand and grasp the shapes and forms in a human way, and then be able to really exaggerate it as I want, hopefully. Should all go according to plan. So we see a lot of that in this piece. I do keep kind of going back and just trying to give off an otherworldly, ethereal vibe. I don't know if I really achieved it, but I kind of feel like I did a bit. With painting the hair, I wanted to bring in some of the ways I go about hair in my traditional art. Now, obviously, it's an entirely different process, and I'm not using line art when I'm painting, but I love the shapes and twists and turns and ribbon-like quality I find when I'm drawing line art of hair, and I wanted to bring that into this piece, especially because the flow of the hair here tells such a story, and helps set the mood. So that was definitely a fun way to spend parts of this process. And believe it or not, what I'm about to say, painting her hands was such a joy here. I think the gesture from the curve of her fingers leading into her face and that vulnerable sort of expression tells a lot of story here. And I also had an entire mentorship session with my queen and savior, Silas A., talking about the painting of delicate hands. And while we didn't work on this piece in particular, I think the teachings from that session helped me a ton. So I don't know, I just really enjoyed that process and how it all came together to help continue to tell the story. All right, I'm just gonna let some parts of this time lapse pass without me talking. Enjoy some lo-fi vibes, courtesy of Lofi Girl, and I'll be back to talk more when I have more to say. Oh, so I wanted to say, sorry, I didn't go away for long, but I'm also trying to be better about using my references and getting references when I feel stuck. I'm the worst. Don't come for me, friends. And I tend to forget to sharpen my eye when I'm in the midst of a painting. So, like I noticed on the arm/elbow areas, in particular in this piece, I was sort of losing the understanding of, well, how arms and elbows work. So it was a lot of taking weird pictures of myself to understand better like the twists and the lines that happen from the muscles there and how it all kind of interacts depending on the angle. And so rather than just pretending I know how anatomy works without reference, I am pleased to say my phone is now full of many dumb reference photos of myself. We are growing, friends. We are doing the things. Look at us go. And I do think that it really helped like bring the piece together, and you'll notice more little tweaks of anatomy as I sort of just like looking at myself in a mirror, taking photos, little videos, whatever works. We got to do it. We got to do the things. So with the scales, something that was important to me in terms of bringing them together was giving a sort of 3D quality to them and to help make certain areas pop out, specifically the areas hit more by light as opposed to falling in shadow. I wanted to give a little bit more detail and apply more of a shadow and a highlight to some individual scales as opposed to just a blob of color that you see more in the parts that are in shadow. And I think that this helped them look more effective and give off like a cool scale-like quality, because that overlap and pushing the idea that they're on top of a layer of the fish skin, I don't know, I think really helped push the tail into a really cool direction. I also used some overlay and color dodge layers to help make the tail and individual scales pop as I needed. But yeah, it was a really fun experiment, again, in specifying certain parts of detail as opposed to all of it being the same level. Even having them the same level and then like pushing the colors to have shadow. Like I think that letting things that are more hit by shadow or can fall into the back burner of the viewer's eyes, letting them be, you know, lower contrast, less specific detail is hard to do, hard to remember to let myself do, but I think it's been really helpful to elevate certain parts of my art. Something I really wanted to work on with this piece too was letting some of my edges disappear, especially in that hair. I sometimes struggle to give up that detail, but I'm learning to trust myself and trust the viewers of my art to fill in the gaps as needed. And I think that letting strands and areas of the hair and areas of the piece as a whole too, because towards the end you'll see I sort of brush over different colors onto the foreground, onto the subject to sort of enhance that effect. But I think that like bringing the background color and that vibrant watery color really lends a nice extra layer to this piece, and again bringing it all together so it doesn't just look like there's a character slapped onto a background, and just letting it really read as a cohesive full togetherness. Okay, and now we are getting into the tail end. Get it? Do you get it? The tail end. Because she's a mermaid and she has a tail. Thank you. Thank you for laughing if you did. Anyway, getting into the end of this piece and finalizing some of the details as needed, you can see a bit of attention going to the fins and then the tail and giving the vibe that I want it to have. I love playing with a translucent kind of texture for the fins and letting color interact in a really fun way with them. I also played around a bit with giving her scales on her body, her arms and shoulders and stuff, but I ended up doing away with them. It was a fun idea. I thought ultimately they were kind of too distracting and interrupted the flow that I wanted. Next mermaid I draw, maybe I'll achieve that idea more successfully. But that's the beauty of digital art. You get to try things and get rid of them, bring them back, get rid of them again, however long you want. I did, however, extend the scales from her tail up to her tummy a bit, and I thought that was a nice little effect to just sort of bring it all together, because really, who knows how a mermaid body is attached to a mermaid tail, fish tail. Anyway. So yeah, this about sums up the final piece. Here we are just adding some finishing touches. Again, playing with bringing some of the background into the foreground. And for that, I literally just color pick, do a layer over. Sometimes I clip it, sometimes I don't, sometimes I try both ways. But yeah, if you take sort of background color and with a really nice soft airbrush and just brush it lightly into the foreground, and it's gonna just really create a sense of unity, and again, make sure that the piece looks like it's all interacting together and it's not just a subject and then a background, photoshopped together. But yeah, here we are, enhancing the certain parts, struggling to figure out where to put the signature, and here she is. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments. Bye.